Hi everyone, I hope you're all well. Welcome to another weekly boost. I'm going to insert a trigger warning here because I am going to be talking about emotional abuse affecting children. The topic for today's weekly boost is the unseen damage of the concept of staying together for the kids in a home where love, truth, and dignity are missing. It's the most dangerous and least discussed form of emotional abuse, but it is preventable if a parent or guardian wake up in time. Now, in a home where infidelity is either suspected or is taking place, parents or guardians feel that just because there are no bruises, that there is no damage being done to children living in a said home. So this concept could not be more incorrect, and we're going to discuss why. Children learn what to tolerate and learn primarily through observation, especially about love, self-worth, and relational boundaries. When a child grows up in a home where disrespect between adults is tolerated, infidelity is swept under the rug or denied, self-abandonment is modeled. As an example, one parent is diminishing their own needs to keep the peace, or unhappiness is normalized, such as having the attitude as, this is just how life is. Or perhaps they observe silent suffering as a way of being. Children are then emotionally programmed to accept disrespect as inevitable, to believe that love equals sacrifice of self, or believe that they are powerless in relationships. Or they learn to mistrust their own intuition, or they feel an inability to sense danger or trust their own gut. Perhaps they may say, I feel this is wrong, but because no one talked about it at home, maybe it's normal. Or they begin to second guess themselves in dangerous situations, perhaps giving people the benefit of the doubt. And perhaps they begin to lower their standards for how they should be treated, and then they accept less than what they deserve. So what's the long-term damage? Well, for daughters, they are at a high risk for either engaging in early sexual activity, not from true readiness, but from seeking worth or approval, because if love at home was conditional, or a parent did not protect their own dignity, then she learns that her body equals currency of love. She's at a higher risk of exploitation, rape, and being in an abusive relationship. Because predators can sense girls with weak boundaries or fawning tendencies, and we'll talk about that a little later. The very behaviors that helped her keep the peace as a child now make her vulnerable in the real world. She's also more susceptible to attract controlling, unfaithful, or emotionally unavailable partners because that's what home felt like. She may also become hyper-independent, emotionally numb, or unable to trust men. Now for sons, they are at risk of either repeating the emotionally absent or avoidant partner role, or become submissive or disconnected from their own authentic masculine presence. The common idea of staying for the child in a toxic emotional environment is actually doing way more harm to the child, more so than a separation would. Children internalize what they see, not what you parents say. So you could tell them, this is love. But if they see unworthiness, disrespect, avoidance, and sadness, that is the energy that they are going to absorb. Remember, children are sponges. If parents believe that maintaining the household protects their children, but they are blind to the emotional modeling that they are absorbing, then that point is moot. Now, specifically when a daughter grows up seeing a parent tolerating disrespect, not protecting their own dignity, it fosters a home dynamic of emotional abandonment, secrecy, and unspoken pain. She'll unconsciously learn, my worth is negotiable. people who withhold love or lie are normal. It's my job to keep peace or please others, even at my own expense. I feel uncomfortable or unsafe if I speak up, or I should freeze or fawn. So let's get into it. The adrenal system has 4 mechanisms that it goes to when it senses danger. 2 are healthy and 2 are not healthy. The 2 healthy ones, you probably are thinking already, it's fight or flight. So it's either you literally attack the person or the situation, right? Or you run, and you run as fast as you can away from the situation. Now, the other 2 mechanisms are to freeze and to fawn. Now, to freeze is the individual may go numb, dissociate, stay silent, perhaps even when they're being touched or pressured in ways that they don't want to. They may appear compliant even when they're not consenting. And this is how many, I'm going to be talking mostly about girls and women just because this is more prevalent, but it can absolutely happen with boys and men. So if this is resonating with you, just apply it to your own situation. But this is how many girls end up in non-consensual situations and then later get labeled in a gray area or confusing rape, when in fact, they were simply frozen and unable to assert themselves. Now, this happened to me, and it is indeed very confusing because in my situation, I did dissociate, and I certainly did not assert myself because I didn't really know what was happening to me at the time, and I was put in a situation where I was being exploited without recognizing what was really happening to me. And it was a very odd experience, especially when you dissociate. It's like you're watching yourself from above. And obviously it's very debilitating because your body is in a frozen mode, literally a frozen state. Now, fawning. This may most likely be many people's response if they're in a home where infidelity was tolerated, or if a parent was emotionally avoidant and tolerated the infidelity for quite a while. The person may smile when uncomfortable, nod when boundaries are crossed. They don't know how to say no because no was not modeled at home. They may seem to agree. They may seem to go along with it to try to appease. All the while, they are terrified inside. But they are just going along with it to avoid something even worse happening to them. This was also my situation. So, freezing or fawning can make somebody susceptible to sexual coercion, manipulative partners, more susceptible to being groomed because they learned at home that discomfort and lack of trust are part of normal relationships. So they tend to miss red flags early. And predators thrive on grooming girls who already believe that they should tolerate discomfort to maintain connection. Again, this was my situation. Unfortunately, this also makes individuals susceptible to believe that their boundaries are not valid. And the reason for this is because they saw no healthy boundaries between their parents or guardians. They were not taught that it was okay to say no, or to walk away, or to be firm in protecting their body and spirit. So this makes them literally unable to act or speak up for themselves in the moment. And then later, they blame themselves, thinking that it was their fault. And then this begins a chronic pattern of trauma bonding and internalized shame and confusion about consent and self-worth. And I personally can attest to all of this. It's really difficult once you get in that cycle, but you can get out of it. It is possible with professional help that's reputable. All this is well documented in trauma literature. I will have all my resources linked below, so you can reference them if you want to. And it is a crisis of unseen emotional abuse in so-called stable homes. Now, a child as they grow older may not know how to fight back or run because their fight or flight instincts have not been developed, because they were not modeled by perhaps the offended parent. Why? Because the offended parent did not stand up for themselves when they found out about the infidelity or when they suspected the infidelity. They just continued right on as if nothing happened. So they didn't view their self-respect as a priority. Therefore, this wiring becomes their children's default, which makes them vulnerable later in life. And then this makes them learn how to respond to unhealthy power dynamics in relationships. So what's the bottom line? Keeping a child in an emotionally unhealthy home where infidelity is suspected or involved is not better than separation. It wires the child to be a future victim. It programs dangerous responses to unsafe situations. A parent or guardian may think, well, I'm staying for the child's stability. But if the stability is rotted at its core, and what's growing in its place is a dangerous template for how a child will experience adulthood, relationships, and their own self-worth, then is it really a stable home? So parents, guardians, will you wake up in time? Your children still may be young enough to grow up in a healthy environment where toxic elements and behaviors will not be remembered, and they can develop into emotionally stable adults that will be able to develop the fight or flight default mechanisms in their adrenal system. Please do not let your children be collateral damage for your denial as a parent, where your insecurity, your emotional cowardice, and conflict avoidance end up training your children's nervous system to freeze or fawn, so that by the time they grow up, they're left with trauma responses that make it feel like it's their fault when it was never their fault to begin with. Well, I really hope that this has helped some of you. I know this was a bit of a heavy topic, but lately there has been a lot of talk in the news and on YouTube about unfaithful marriages where children are involved. And a lot of the times the children get forgotten. And many individuals don't realize the impact that infidelity and the toleration of it for however long a time does affect them in the long term, and how it molds their personalities and how it wires their adrenal response, and how it affects the way that they interact with other people and their future relationships as they get older, and how it affects how they see themselves, how they view their self-worth, if they feel they're worthy of self-respect, if they feel they need to please others in order to feel accepted. These are really, really serious topics because it centers around how they identify with themselves, how they feel the world views them, but more importantly, how they view themselves. If they don't have good examples at home from their parents, the ones that they trust the most, the ones that they love the most, treating themselves with respect, showing themselves love, extending kindness to themselves and to one another, then they are not going to have the right guidance or the right tools in their arsenal to be able to emulate that for themselves. Because their parents act as mirrors in the home, because that's where they spend the most time, is at home. That is their safe haven. And 95% of the decisions that people make, what we do, is made in the subconscious mind. So parents have to really, really be cognizant what they do, how they speak. Even when they think that children are not listening or not observing, they absolutely are. So a good tip that is helpful that I have used in my life is to pretend we're being recorded all the time in our life, or to pretend that somebody of authority is watching us and keeping a record of everything that we say or do. This helps us keep accountable of our behavior and our actions. Granted, we're not perfect. We are going to make mistakes. But it really does help keep our speech in check, keep our actions in check, keep how we relate to each other in check, and again, apply what I referred to in another video as the KTT. If you treat people with kindness, thoughtfulness, and tact, you can never go wrong. And that includes showing these 3 things to ourselves. So let's not forget our children. They are really, really important, and it's our job as adults. I'm not a parent, but it's parents and guardians' responsibility to keep them not just physically safe, but psychologically and emotionally safe. So hopefully this is a topic that perhaps can be shared with others, because it isn't talked about a lot. And for myself, as someone who has been in an abusive relationship, and when I did research on this, I really saw a lot of parallels to my situation growing up as a child and the dynamics that I saw with my parents. And it is true, learned behaviors you don't realize as you're growing up that do affect how you relate to others as an adult. Well, everyone, I hope that you have a lovely rest of your day, and we'll see you in another one. Bye for now.